You're listening to the 52 Weeks podcast. Hello, my name's Steph, and we're going to start off with two questions for this episode. What would your 80-year-old self thank you for right now? What would they thank you for? Isn't that an interesting question? And this one's a little harder. What's one thing that you're doing right now today that your future self would wish for you to stop? And the title for this episode is Your Future Self is Watching. And I used to work at assisted living, so it's very easy for me to picture all these cute 80-year-olds. We even had a 100-year-old gal, and she was 101, and to picture them. And I just feel like old people are like the cutest. I love their wrinkles. I love their gray hair. I love their experiences. And so to picture my 80-year-old self and think right now, what would she thank me for? But what would she wish that I would stop doing? Those are hard. And um and I feel like the wish that she stopped doing it's a little deeper than I probably want to share right now, but it makes me really think about the next 40 years of my life. I feel like I just turned 40. I'm turning 41 and I feel like that's so old. And 80-year-old me would be like, "Oh my gosh, you're so young." And when I worked at the assisted living, they would always be like, "Oh, don't get old, your body falls apart and everything." But like 40 40 so different than 80. 60 still so different than 80, um and now I hope that I can live till I'm 80, but like what are things that I should be changing right now? And you can look at like retirement, how to save for when you're 80. You know, how to save for when you're 80. To taking care of yourself, like some of the old people there, like that were the best physical shape, they would like go on walks every day. They would go to like the exercise, which was like chair exercise that you would just like move your arms. But they were active and moving. And even if they were 80 and 90, they didn't have the struggles as some of the residents who were younger in there. Um, I think about like those that had smoked and how and I think about like their stories of things that they wish they would have done different with their kids or financially or in relationships with a significant other. So this is getting deep, but I want you to think about those two questions. And this episode, we're really diving into how often the choices we make. So to start, I want to dive into the psychology of this. So psychologist Hal Hirschfeld has spent years studying what he calls future self continuity. And his research found that many people think that their future selves of almost like strangers, and the less connected we feel to the person will become, the easier it is to choose what's comfortable today instead of what's better tomorrow. That's why we procrastinate, overspend, skip workouts, or avoid difficult conversations. Tomorrow's version of us ends up paying for today's decisions. And man, that's harsh. And I feel like but it's true, like it's the reality. If you don't save for retirement, at the assisted living, there were people that were there like on Medicaid, and that wasn't really where they wanted to be, but they didn't have an option. Um, they couldn't have kept their house or whatnot. Or so the interesting thing, I feel like a couple seasons ago, I think it was season 3 with Tracy and Melody, we talked a lot about our future selves. And that was like the first time I was like, oh, if I do the dishes today, my future self will thank me. Even though that future self was like tomorrow. And it sort of got me in this mindset. And even though I can't really picture what my 80-year-old self would look like honestly, when I picture it, I'm picturing these cute ladies that I loved, who would always come to bingo and who had like the perfect little curled hair that they just want to like get their hair done and everything, and their little sweater set. Their walker. That's like what I'm picturing. Okay, there's really like 3 things that I wanted to talk about with your future self. And The first is to write a letter from your future self to you. Now, imagine that you're 80 years old writing to yourself today. What advice would you give? What would you tell yourself to stop worrying about? What would you encourage yourself to start? And honestly, like, I'm at a place in my life where, like, I'm feeling old. Like, I really am. I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm 40, almost 41. And like, thinking about what my 80-year-old self would say to me, instantly it gives me peace because it's like, oh, I still have time. And also being like the little things that I'm worrying about right now, some of the day-to-day stuff, it's not gonna matter when I'm 80. And it just gives that perspective of how would I wanna be and what would my future self tell me? Would they tell me, like, right now while I'm not with a walker and stuff to, like, go hike more and see more peaks? Would they tell me to, like, go paddleboard more? Would they tell me to do more of the things that I enjoy? Like, it makes me be like, "What would I do?" Because I remember when I worked at the assisted living, I took them on a tram up to the top of the mountain, and I can't even tell you how excited they were because so many of them hadn't been on a mountain peak in years. It's different, like, driving and getting out and, like, actually being on the peak of a mountain, and I think about that a lot, like, how I I think about that a lot of, like, how lucky I am to have the life I do right now and be in the moment I am, and, like, one of my big things that I'm worried about. And I have a few big things that I'm like, "Will this work out or what's going on?" But I think that, like, my future self would just tell me to, like, trust and have faith. Have faith that everything's gonna happen the way it needs to because it already has in my life. I've seen that for the past 40 years. Everything that's happened has been a benefit to me, like, and so I don't know why, but, like, this writing a letter from your future self, I'm so happy I did this episode, and I'm so happy that, like, going through all this because this is gonna be something that I feel like when I start to feel stressed or start feeling old, just being like, "Hey, what's like, 80-year-old stuff?" Maybe I need to do a AI, like, picture so I can just, like, look at her and be like, "What advice would you tell me?" But there's actually research with this. Research suggests that exercises connecting people with their future selves, can encourage healthier long. So, like, the research, like I said from before with Hal, it really does, like, connecting people with their future selves can encourage healthier long-term decisions. And so every day I'm probably not gonna be like, "Oh, what would my future self think?" But, like, in those times that I'm feeling stressed or bogged down by, like, the stuff that in the grand scheme is trivial, thinking about this of talking to my future self, really, I foresee as a thing that will help me, feel peace. And the second thing is focus on tiny wins. There are sometimes those moments that are huge life-changing moments, but a lot of our lives are 100 of small little decisions. Um, one chop, going on one walk, reading one chapter, one phone call, one meeting. Those small actions compound over time. So, and with this, you could choose one tiny habit you want to repeat this week. And the third thing is to invest in future memories because your future self won't only remember like the accomplishments, the goals you accomplished, but they're going to remember the people, the conversations. I can still remember one conversation I had with a friend at Lagoon and what ride at Lagoon's amusement park and what ride we were on. And it was just like a heart to heart. And that was like such a good conversation. There's so many of those moments. And that you remember of conversations, vacations, um, different birthdays, different random things that you go to. Sometimes the routine of like what's going on Tuesday, it's not they all blend together, but when you have those future memories that are different, they stand out. And like the great thing is like I hope this has just been a reminder that like your 80-year-old self, if they're sitting across from you today, to really think about that. But like, you don't have to change your entire life this week. Just make like a decision today that your future self will be proud of. Because one decision becomes one habit becomes one lifestyle, and before you know it, you've become your younger and before you know it, you've become the person your younger self would have hoped for. So thank you so much for listening to 52 Weeks, and I'll catch you guys next Monday.